I was asked by Jeremy from Blackmagic Craft if I wanted to do a video on his tabletop game, Idols of Torment. While trying to pay back some of the inspiration Jeremy for years has wholeheartedly shared with this hobby community, also jumping at the fact that his new game has a tremendous story and setting, I kind of got carried away. Luckily, I was not alone. Veronica, the perfect artist and creator to shape something physical out of stories. I'm honored that she jumped aboard as if this was the most natural thing in the world. Idols of Torment is a miniatures agnostic skirmish game set in the Echo, a place or non-place, the merged collapse of heaven and hell, where angels and demons have been turned into statues or rubble in a warped and constantly changing landscape of ruin. In the Echo, our afterlife souls wander, trapped like ghosts, yet filled with power. They are called the Lost. Their soul power is needed by ancient entities, the primordials, in order to survive. To harvest this power, to reap our souls, the primordials created the idols, hunters, distorted reflections of their creators. The idols are twisted beings, manifestations of power, desire, weakness, despair. When idols manifest into the Echo, candles across the landscape burst into flames and ominous horns blare in the dark and cloudy skies. The idols materialize and the Echo become their hunting ground and battleground. In the Echo, the idols are driven by a single purpose: to reap the souls of the lost. When Veronica and I started to plan this collaboration, our first thoughts went straight to the creation of a diorama inspired by the story of the Echo. But somewhere along the way, feeding off each other's thoughts, we conceptualized the idea. There's a lot of ideas and thoughts gone into this game setting that comes from our world, but like looking at it in a distorted image of a broken mirror. Heaven and hell, angels and demons, totems, idols. We played around with the word idol, similar to the word icon, but with a pagan twang, and decided we should build an icon. A little shrine, something you'd expect to see walking into an Orthodox church, the imagery of a saint, usually a face, surrounded by symbols. A landscape of sorts with a forced perspective, religious art, distorted in a broken mirror, built out of broken angels and the souls of the lost. Idols of Torment is a miniatures agnostic game. This means you can play with whatever miniatures you like. The setting of the game, to my mind, could be quite alluring for disturbing kit bashes and scratch builds. But there are also miniatures created for the game, 3D printable STL files, for those that want to take that path. We decided to use these not only as characters in our shrine, but as building blocks. Imagine how many lost there must be. How many souls are there not? Our saint, a void relic, a manifestation, a face in anguish, built out of lost souls. Veronica is a crafter, an artist. I sincerely urge you to follow and support her on Instagram. They're known as Florencia Grotesque. She does all the things I don't, in a good way. And I don't necessarily mean the crafting bit, it's bigger than that. You know the saying, to think outside of the box? Well, I think my box has relatively high walls, whereas Veronica has forgotten where she put her box. Thus, it no longer affects the creation process. And so she was to build and craft our ideas into reality, build a shrine out of miniatures, broken angels, and a fair bit of green stuff. Nothing I could ever have done. I'm still intrigued by her ability to take shards of pottery and little plastic miniatures and transform them into a holy or possibly unholy relic. A very good reason to collaborate. Working together with someone, when possible, is a great opportunity not only to share time together, but to get alternative perspectives on things, to learn, or to just watch someone else do what they're good at, excitedly awaiting the final result. In this hobby, that's relatively rare. One of the reasons I enjoy this hobby is because of the alone time. But collaborating like this has been a great thing, and I'd like to recommend it as a bit of an eye-opener. Don't worry, once we've glanced at the wide world for a bit, we can return to our caves again, only now a little wiser. Seeing what Jeremy and friends have done with this game is quite remarkable. Game design, art design, miniatures and stories. There is no huge game production cooperation behind this, remember? Most cool of all is that the gameplay reflects the chaos of the Echo. Each player controls a group of idols, not only fighting against an opponent, but simultaneously trying to capture the lost. Represented on the table as miniatures controlled by an in-game AI. The terrain itself can also change during the game, making gameplay very much true to the story. Please do check out the Kickstarter, linked down below in the description. Veronica sculpted out the basic face structure out of pink XPS foam, thereafter adding the lost miniatures together with clay, milliput and porcelain angel bits, sculpting something like a mountain that is a face that is a huge living mass of the lost. There will be stairs winding up around the mountain with platforms, like the winding roads of old paintings, a ruined landscape that is uncomfortably alive. Using the ceramic angels was a stroke of genius on Veronica's part. I think it takes the build out of the miniature world a little, putting the piece in its own realm. These angels are from our world. We've seen them on our grandmother's mantelpiece. Why are they in a scary diorama? This piece, I'd like to say, this piece of art, is quite a mental leap from painting a little Stormcast soldier for my Age of Sigmar army. A leap Veronica very much helped me take. I mean, not by any direct coaching, but for being someone to bounce ideas back and forth with. This is going back to the collaborative thoughts, but I find that ideas can feel less strange and distant when voiced out loud to someone else, especially when they are returned with a comment containing words like, "That was a good idea." Also the silent collaboration. Seeing the Echo being assembled in front of me, I thought of what it might actually look like. Thoughts I could have because my brain was not occupied with building the piece like it usually is. Again, relying on conceptual ideas to try and tell a story with the paint rather than paint correctly. Trying to treat the whole build as if it were a two-dimensional painting or a photograph rather than a thing of depth. And what does the Echo look like? I mean, the color palette. More up to me, that one, but let's face it, nothing about this is normal. Also, there's candles. Candles are a big thing in the Echo. Kind of fits, really, the candles forming a pentagram, or the prayer candles in a church, all mixed together. We use the candles that come as STL files with the game as in-game markers to create points of light and thus points of interest. Also the lovely color orange. May I remind you, when idols manifest in the Echo, candles across the landscape burst into flames and ominous horns blare in the dark and cloudy skies. So this entire piece is lit by a void type thing and candles and lots of ghosts that maybe have a slight glow of power to them. Yeah, it's also huge and contains more miniatures than my army, and that took a year to paint. I used the airbrush to sketch out, I guess we'll have to call it ambience, on the three main character models. This would be my approach for the entire paint job. First, a black and white light sketch with the airbrush, then moving on to coloring that black and white sketch with thin paint through the airbrush, to then move on to regular brushwork for details. The character miniatures kind of got to decide what the rest of the world would look like, lit from above and the back by the strange glow of the Echo, lit from underneath by the glow of candlelight. This was of course also a great way of getting some painting done while Veronica was still working on the build. Also reassuring and comforting to work solely on the miniatures and not the entirety of the piece. Veronica can actually draw and paint for real, like this massive interpretation of Dante's Inferno in a modern sewage adaptation. I'm more of a three-dimensional coloring book type painter, but we very much cooperated in an encouraging sort of hands-off way, trusting the other person to do what they think is best, and that, filtered through our mutual ideas, will be what gives this piece its originality. When airbrushing, especially in the dusty manner that I did, a lot of blacks, real deep shadows, get dusted over. My way to solve this was that after the airbrush and regular brushwork, I moved on to oil paint. Not only to use the winning qualities of oil paint, like creating very flowy washes or being able to create smooth gradients on the large surfaces. I also wanted to tone down and desaturate things. My turquoise and orange approach was looking very modern, and I wanted to bring in a little darkness, some more down-to-earth, medieval tones. Favored by me are indigo and purple madder. And it wasn't until some excessive darkness was added to the very highlighted piece that I was starting to feel content with how the colors came together. A lot of brush strokes were made. A lot of superglue was used. Almost 100 minis were printed. Trains were traveled. Music was made. Picture frames were destroyed to then be resurrected. Numerous airbrush clogs dissolved and pizzas eaten. In the end, this video is but a glance of the process, but I believe we have created something rather epic. I hope you like it, Jeremy, and thank you for the inspiration. I want to clarify that nothing in this video is done out of spite. Beheading angels was not done to offend. Rather, they are pawnshop finds that were given a new life as a piece of art. We would have beheaded devils too, but for some reason people don't seem to sell their ceramic devil collections. A great thank you to Veronica. Go check her out. Buy some of her home-sculpted little corpses and give her a follow on Instagram. And please, support me as well as you see fit. Thank you for watching. Bye.